and welcome back. My name is Kaley Gray, and I'm super excited to have Mallory Garshnick on the vlog with me today. I have been following Mallory on social media for the last year, and the reason I started following you, Mallory, is because of your daily dose of positivity. And so you're probably seeing by today's vlog, we're talking about positivity. It's the first vlog of 2023, which is so exciting. I cannot believe it's here already. And I was kind of talking to Mallory about this, that, you know, when you start a new year, like you're just like, oh, everything's good. I have my goals and everything, but trials and circumstances sometimes come. And how can you stay positive? And I'm like praying that none of that happens to you. But I also feel like I want to help equip you, even if you're not going through trials and circumstances right now, like something might happen. And so just how to stay positive in the midst of that. And so I'm just super excited to have you on, Mallory, just to kind of share that, like, where did this positivity come from? Like what started this?
Yeah, so actually, so this was about July of 2021. It was just sort of something that was placed on my heart. My husband and I were having a conversation, and he's like, one of his friends had mentioned something to him, that I had done a live video or something, and that, you know, seeing my face and kind of sharing something that was relevant and inspiring from my day was helping him. And my husband looked at me and he's like, you should do a daily dose of positivity. And I was like, who, me? You know, because I don't feel like I'm a positivity expert by any means. And I remember thinking, you know what, I actually think this is a really good time for that, because summer of 2021, there was, I mean, and there always is going to be craziness going on in the world. And social media is a place where you can find a lot of negativity. It's not too easy, or it's not too hard to find negativity on social media. So I decided that instead of saying, hey, I'm gonna, you know, maybe get off social media to protect myself from the negativity, or I'm gonna unfollow certain accounts. I mean, you know, it was like, I'm gonna be the change I wanna see in the world. Not in the whole world, but in the social media realm, my small little corner of the internet, right? And I'm going to bring positivity to that group of people. And so I made a commitment. I tried not to overthink it, because I made a very large commitment and I knew I would have talked myself out of it. But I said, I'm going to go live on Instagram every single day for 365 days with a daily dose of positivity. So within the first week, I immediately regretted that decision. And I was like, I don't feel like being positive today. I don't have anything to share. Today was a crummy day. We had a baby and a young toddler at the time. And, you know, it was just like, you have those days, right? Or I remember I had an injury from tennis, and I'm like, I couldn't really move my neck. And I was like, I don't want to go on and try to tell people, you know, how great everything is. But what I realized is, you're not positive because life is easy. You're positive because life can be really hard. And so showing up every day, like sometimes the topic that I talked about was how to show up when you don't feel like it, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't just arbitrarily choose that topic. Like, that's how I was feeling that day. I didn't feel like showing up, but I told myself, I prioritized the commitment that I had made to myself to show up every single day for 365 days. And I said, I'm not going to allow this day or this one thing to get in the way of that. And so I showed up even when I didn't feel like doing it. And I learned a lot. So yeah, that's where that came from.
Oh, I love that. That's so good. And I know something we've talked about too, because I know no matter what season you're in, whether you're single, you're married, you don't have kids, you do have kids, like there are always moments that positivity is needed in your life. And circumstances happen. And something you said is you can still be the woman that you want to be, even in the circumstances you don't love. Like, what do you, like, how can they be positive in those circumstances?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that, you know, people will often will look at other people's lives and will say, oh, well, you know, it's easier for her because XYZ, right? And so you can look at someone who, let's say you have 2 kids like me. You could look at someone who doesn't have any kids and say, oh, well, of course she has time to work out and eat healthy because she's not having to feed 2 toddlers. But at the same time, the person who has 5 kids is going to look at me and could say, well, she only has 2 kids and I'm trying to chase around 5 kids. So, and then there's always someone who has a more difficult circumstance than what you're in, and an easier circumstance than what you're in. And the thing that we have to remember, especially with social media, is that it's such a highlight reel, right? Like, you have no idea what's really going on in other people's lives. You're seeing these small 15-second snippets throughout the day of their stories. And 1, it's 15 seconds at a time. But 2, it's whatever they're choosing to show you, And so you have to remember that that's not the full picture. So I think comparison can get really, toxic, right? Because, we're constantly comparing ourselves to other people. And I think the flip side of that too, like with the comparison thing, is that, we sort of know that we shouldn't covet our neighbor or be envious of, what our neighbor has. So it's like we think of comparison where it's like you want something that someone else has, but there's the other side of that coin where it gets tricky to not compare your difficulties to other people's difficulties too. Because I think sometimes when you are in that struggle season, you'll say to yourself, you'll kind of shame yourself and be like, oh, well, Mallory, come on, get it together. Like, you're not allowed to be sad because look at what's going on with Susie Q down the street. Now that's a real problem. What you're facing is nothing compared to that. And that's the same thing, like that's comparison. So while I feel like we shouldn't compare in an envious and jealous way, we also need to be careful of comparing our struggles to other people's and therefore then shaming ourselves, because whatever it is that we're going through is difficult and challenging at that time. And you can look back on that later and say, oh, maybe that wasn't as big of a deal as I thought it was at the time. But I use the example of like when you're talking to your kids, right? Or just children in your life. And let's say they're complaining that, I don't know, someone called them a silly name on the playground, right? Like they're 7 years old and someone, is making fun of them on the playground. Well, when you're in your 30s and 40s or whatever, you might say that's silly. Like if you called me a silly name right now, it's not going to ruin my day. I'm just going to be like, oh, okay, she doesn't like me. That's all right. We're going to move past that. But when you're 7 years old, it is a big deal and it does rock your world. But if a little kid ran up to you and was like, oh, he called me, I don't know, a butthead. Yeah. You're not going to be like, oh, Johnny, that's ridiculous. Just brush it off. You're going to talk to them and say, oh, that must have hurt your feelings. And I'm sorry that happened. And you're going to talk to Johnny and you're going to, do you see what I'm saying? So it's like, once you've been through the things that you've been through, you can look back and say that you've grown and you've learned from those situations and they wouldn't affect you in the same way if they happened again today. But you have to remember that at the time, those are rocking your world. And so I think allowing yourself to feel all of those things is so important. And as far as like being the woman or the mom or the wife or the daughter that you want to be in the situation you don't love, you don't have to like be in this perfect situation to be the highest version of yourself. Yeah. And I think one of the things that's helped me with that, and again, not an expert, not perfect at this, okay? But it's definitely something I'm working on. And one of the things that helps me is like thinking through those situations. And if you're a journaler, I think this would probably be even more effective if you wrote it down. But I tend to kind of think through things and process out loud a lot of times. So talk to myself, that's code word for talk to yourself. But kind of journaling through those situations. So if you're in a difficult situation or you're in a situation where you're frustrated, or somebody does something that, just really triggers you and sets you off, how do you want to respond? And think through that ahead of time so that when you're then in that situation, you're not being reactive, you're being responsive. Like you can choose to, I like to tell myself to pause and pray, because nothing requires an immediate response. Whether it's a text message or that, is getting a little heated, or a situation at work or a situation with your spouse or your children or whatever, nothing requires an absolute, well, I shouldn't say nothing, almost nothing requires an absolute immediate response, right? There's always that time to pause and pray and figure out how you want to respond versus just allowing yourself to react.
No, that's so good. I think reacting is, I mean, something we all do, you know, there's times where I'll like react. I'm like, oh, why did I react that way? And definitely have to go back. And it's usually the people that are closest to you and the ones that
Oh,
you
yeah.
love that you react the worst with. And I think that's because you feel safe and you can be yourself with them. I know something for me, I've always had, and I've said this before, is like people always thought I was fake because I was so positive. They're like, nobody can be that nice. You know what I mean? And I just was like, no, like, do I have hard days? Do I have circumstances? Yes. Do I wish I was in a different season? Yes. But I like take each day to choose to be positive and celebrate those around me that might be in that other season. And so I know something for me is like, even like I'll be like driving to work or something, and I find something to be grateful for that day. And I think in the midst of no matter like what you're going through, and I know you've had crazy circumstances this last year, but you can always find something to be grateful for. Even if it's just your car, like you're like thankful for this car, thankful for this, you know. And I think that definitely, I don't know if you agree, but like helps with positivity and just kind of like shifting your mindset.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And research shows that the more grateful you are, the happier you are. There's a really strong correlation between the two. And so, yeah. And to address, you know, the concerns, I mean, the difficult season that we've had in the last year, I remember a few weeks into Daily Dose of Positivity, I was like going strong. I'm doing the videos every day. And I remember this like intrusive thought came up that I was like, what if I'm doing this every day to prepare myself for something bad that's going to happen before I get to day 365? And I was like, no, don't think that. Like, you know, just kind of pushed it away. I was like, I don't even want to think about that. So day 272, never going to forget, I received news that I had breast cancer. And that was a complete shock. I have no prior health issues, really healthy 37-year-old, no, you know, family history, like none of the things that, you know, are the biggest risk factors. And so it felt like it came out of nowhere. But I continued. I continued multiple. I had a couple surgeries. I, you know, went through different treatments, and I continued every single day with a Daily Dose of Positivity. And so I think a big part of that was, and if I'm honest, it was more for me than it was for my audience. Like, yes, there were people who would send me messages and say, hey, you've really helped me get through this difficult time, or a divorce, or loss of my job, or we're moving and things didn't turn out like I thought they were. And I appreciated those messages so much because they also added that fuel to the fire to keep going. But if I'm totally honest, I think it was more for myself than anything, because I woke up every day, like you said, and I had to find something positive to talk about. Yeah. So that made me search for the positivity in my life every day. And the gratitude. And, you know, sometimes like I would write down 3 things that I was grateful for every day. And sometimes I would literally write down like the sun, you know, and I know, I mean, I guess it is a big thing, but it feels like a small thing, right? Like it sometimes feels insignificant. But I'm like, no, I was grateful for that. I could go outside and, you know, feel the warmth on my skin, and it made me feel good and energized. And, you know, I just kind of, sometimes those things are so small, like you're saying, but they get you through it. And so I continued to, you know, show up, and I'm still going strong day 500 something later, because when I got to the end in day 365, I wasn't really ready to stop. And so I kept going. So I didn't stop. And I don't know how long it'll go, but I am going to continue to show up until, you know, it no longer feels like that's how he wants me serving. And we'll do something different from there. But yeah.
I love that. And I think too, like you said earlier, like you're being a bright light on social media where so many things are negative. And it's not that you're not being real and genuine, but you're literally bringing positivity to the social media. Like you might be that positive light that's in that person's life that day. And I think that's so important. And so whether you are a positive person or you're not, like finding somebody positive to be around or to see, that also like boosts your positivity. I know, like I might have been going through something or something, and then I was like, your face would like pop on my social media, and I just was like, Yes, like I needed that positivity today, like no
Oh,
matter
good.
what season you're in. And so
Mhm.
I think that's like great, like to surround yourself with people
Yeah.
that continue to help you be positive, because I mean, there are people that are in situations where they're not around positive people all the time. But thankfully, like through the power of social media, I love social media. Like, of course, I do a lot on social media, but it allowed me to connect with you. It's allowed me to
Absolutely.
connect with so many people. And just like even being able to connect that way and be positive with that person that, you know, might be my friend on social media that I might not have around me at the moment that I'm in. I think it's so important. So I'll definitely put all of your information below so you guys can go follow Mallory and all of her positivity that she does, and just her journey. It's just been amazing. And before we end the vlog, is there anything that you want to encourage anybody? It could be about positivity or, you know, anything as we start this 2023 year.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so this is a blank canvas. You know, you can make this year whatever you want it to be. And I'm just going to piggyback on what you just said, Kaley, because you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So make a list of who those people are. Just write down the first 5 names, the people that you know you spend the majority of your time with, and then be really mindful of, are those the names that you want to have on your list, right? Because if you're going to be the average of those 5 people, then be conscientious of where you're spending your time and with whom you're spending your time. Are there people who are on there you really look up to and admire and want to be more like, but they're not necessarily on your list? Are there people on your list who you're like, gosh, I really don't want my life to go in the direction that theirs has gone, and they're not people that I look up to or respect? Can you figure out a way to remove some of those people? And not everybody, you know, can be added or removed. I understand there's certain circumstances that you just can't remove, like a family member or something. But there's a lot more power there than you might give yourself credit for. So do that quick exercise. It's not going to take but 2 minutes, and figure out, you know, what are the characteristics that you want to surround yourself with. Like, who are the types of people you're looking for, and then seek those people out. That can be on social media. That does not have to be, you know, in-person relationships, right? You can find those people and connect with those people. We've become great friends. We chat all the time. We've never met in person, and I would love to one day, but in the meantime, we'll continue, you know, being friends virtually, and you can find those connections and find those people, whether they're, you know, near or far. So
No. Well, thank you so much, Mallory.
thank you. Thanks for having me.
So fun. I love this. I hope that you guys are encouraged today, because I'm so excited for what 2023 has in store. And like Mallory said, you have a blank canvas. Like, you can make it what you want. Circumstances might be coming into your life, but you have the opportunity to choose how you want to have those circumstances end. I guess, you know, you can be a bright light in the midst of the circumstances that you might be going through. So I can't wait to see you guys next time, and have a great day.
Bye.